In this video, we're going to look at how to call the constructor from our main class. So we've completed our constructor implementation. So I forgot to make the Java doc for the second one. So again, this one was the non-default constructor. And it initializes, I spelled that wrong, all the fields for a student. And then it fills in information about all of the different parameters. This is the first name. LN is the last name. GPA is the GPA. And credits is earned credits for the student. So now we want to be able to call these methods from the main program. So I'm going to click on my main. And last time we had set up some example students. I'm going to comment all of those out so that I can add like new information in here. So I'm just going to put some comments around my old data declarations for the student 1 and student 2 so that I can start fresh. But I'm going to leave in everything about how I've read in data because we're going to use that again. So first, when you're calling the constructor, you have to think about which version do I want to call? Do I want to call the version that just sets up a student and doesn't initialize all of the data, or do I want to call the version that initializes all the data? Let's call the non-default version first. Add that in here. So I'm going to make a new object of type student type. My data is called, or my data type is called student type. Yours might be called student. And I'm going to call it student 1, just like last time. And I'm going to say I want to make a new student type object. And now it's saying I could call it with no parameters, or I could call the version that takes 4 parameters. So it's showing me my 2 different options for the constructor. In this example, I'm going to call it using the data that I collected in my main program. So I'm going to pass in the first name, the last name, the GPA, and the credits earned, the data that I collected from the main program. And when I make that call in my program, kind of if I'm thinking about the memory worksheet, what's happening when I create that object, student 1, is I'm getting those 4 data fields that are associated with the student class. The computer knows I should make one called first name, last name, GPA, and credits. So it's going to set all of that up in my space for that student. And then it's going to call the version of the constructor that takes 4 parameters. So it'll check to make sure there is one. And then it's going to match up each of these arguments with the parameters just in order. So it's going to match up FN with the first parameter, LN with the second, GPA with the third, and credits earned with the fourth. And that's going to be good for us because we're expecting them in exactly that order. We have to be careful and pass them in the right order. So in my main program, I was calling it, we get to like pick what kind of data values we wanted to use. So suppose that the user had entered Sally Smith. She has a 4.0 and she's earned 15 credits. Then it would pass those 4 local variables into this constructor and they'd be used to initialize our data fields. So first name would get the value Sally, and then the last name would get the value Smith, and GPA would get the 4.0, and the credits earned, she has 15. So it's going to bundle all of that information together in the student 1 object. Now, if I want to create an object using the default constructor, the one that doesn't take any parameters, I would just say student type student 2 equals new student type. And then I would leave my parentheses empty. That's going to call the default constructor. And in the default constructor, it's still going to set up all 4 of those data fields. So it's still going to create space to store the first name, space to store the last name, space to store the GPA, and space to store the credits. But in the default constructor, it only establishes values for GPA and credits because those are the only two instructions we give it. So the GPA would be equal to 0.0 and the credits would be 0. The first and last name would stay uninitialized. So again, the first version here that we called here in the code, that calls the non-default constructor, and the second version that calls the default constructor, the one that doesn't take any arguments. And actually, every time that we've been creating an object all semester long where we use this reserved word new and put the data type over here with parentheses, we've been calling constructors all semester long. And so now hopefully you have a little bit of appreciation for what exactly all that code means. It's just a method call. It's a method called to a special method, the constructor. It gets called automatically when you allocate space for a new object.